Good morning, dear friends. Welcome. Today is the 24th of Elul, September 20th. It's a Tuesday. Tonight will be Chaf Hey Elul, the day that we commemorate creation. Gracious Bar Likim As Hashemayim V'Haaretz V'Haaretz Haisa Toyu V'Voyu. That's all describing the events that immediately precede and then happen on what we call Chaf Hey Elul, the 25th of Elul. So we're living in important times, important dates as we prepare for a new year. And I can't be more grateful, and I persist in my belief that there's nothing more significant and no better way to prepare for a new year than to gather in the study of the Gemara. And we are studying Masechet Shabbat, chapter 19, page 134b. And I should say we're learning one page, one line at a time. And I want to dedicate today's learning the schus of our very, very special, fantastic members of our Chabura, who are dedicated, notwithstanding all the stuff that goes on in life, to learn and to contribute with wisdom and life experience and insight into this very, very wonderful exercise or experiment, we might call it, as this Talmud Chabura, as we approach, I think, our third. We started not fully our third year, but I think we're going to be entering our third Rosh Hashanah in this Chabura, I believe. My math may be off. Where's Mark? When Mark gets on, we'll check with him. As for sure, second Rosh Hashanah, maybe third. Because hold on, we started in March 2020. It's all a blur. Anyways, let's jump into the Gemara. When Mark gets back, we'll ask him to help us manage our.
You're not including the yeshiva night stuff that started on a weekly basis before, you know.
So we can really. It's true. If we need to inflate the span of this year, we have good ample. We could say this is a 5-year exercise.
There you go.
So depending on what we need to accomplish. Anyways, my point is, I'm full of gratitude as we approach the new year to the folks here who gave me a gift, an opportunity to study Gemara every day with really, really fantastic, brilliant life, bringing a lot of life experience and different perspectives to the Gemara. And I truly believe that it enriches this learning experience to the extreme to have different perspectives. And, you know, when you learn something on your own, you only have your own perspective. And when you learn with others, and especially people that have life experience and Torah knowledge and from different perspectives and industries, it really does something very special for what the final result, which is this Gemara we study. And so again, as we approach a new year, my thanks, my gratitude, special. Let me share the screen.
Rabbi.
Yes, Alan, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. We've discussed a lot of the ins and outs of circumcision and all the different problems that arise, but we didn't discuss yet what happens to children who were born circumcised.
I believe
do they have to draw blood?
I believe that will come up, but you're right, because I'll explain to you why we didn't discuss it here. Because we are in principle not learning about circumcision. I know you could have fooled me. We are in principle learning about Shabbos. Shabbos happens to have an element where there is an intersection between the halacha of Shabbos and circumcision. And so that's really the primary focus of our Gemara. Midei Dabri Bo, as we're already talking about circumcision in the context of Shabbos, we have taken a detour to talk about certain facets of circumcision. So, for example, we spoke about the children that are not well, but remember, it all started with talking about how to treat a baby who is in the aftermath of circumcision. And this was really, and then we talked about how to fashion a bandage on Shabbos. And then from there, we did take a little detour to talk about other medical issues or other concerns, but this is not the totality or the entirety of the discussion about bris, but we did seize on this Gemara to really build up our knowledge base and the picture of what Jewish circumcision looks like and the halachas of it. But let's see if we'll encounter that question too. It's a good question.
I learned from the Gemara, basically, one of the things I learned that if I ever meet anybody whose name is Nassan Abavli, I know his Mila was postponed.
Yeah, if you meet someone today called Nassan Abavli,
I figured his bris was postponed.
possibly. By the way, it's very
I'm only
interesting. Usually, to my knowledge, Nassan Abavli is like it's like practically a last name. It would be like, or if you have two people in the old shtetl, you had two guys called Label, so they'd call one guy Label the Geller because he had a blonde or reddish hair, and then you'll have Label the Schwarze because his hair was, again, I don't mean that in a how do you call it, as a pejorative, but for the black hair. And so it was usually just to distinguish between different individuals that had the same name. So I always assumed that Nassan Abavli probably contrasted with another Nassan who wasn't Bavli, and that became like his nickname or almost his last name. And not today, in our Gemara, we find that they call these kids, two kids, Nassan, and not just Nassan Habavli. They embrace the last name. Now, I showed you yesterday the Ben Yoyada who says, oh yeah, because there are a lot of Nassans, and so they wouldn't know that it was named for him. But yet, that's something that I would not have predicted or expected had I not seen it in the Gemara and had I not seen the confirmation of the Ben Yoyada. But now, our objective for the moment here is to talk about or to read the halacha of a baby who is not born in a condition to undergo a circumcision. And again, not to be overly complimentary, but this is a question that Dr. Hammer brought up yesterday, and I'm grateful that he did, and we'll continue to answer it for a moment here in addition to the Gemara's comment. Let's see how the Code of Jewish Law structures what we learned, and let's see if there are any other facets or halachas that we can infer based on this Gemara. And to just do this right, I want to open it. No, hold on. Kuf Lamed Dalid. Let's just Kuf Lamed. Let's see, Kuf Lamed Gimel. No. Hold on, no, I think I'm in the wrong place. I'm sorry. It's Reish Samach Gimel. What am I looking at? Reish Samach Gimel. Sorry. Do this again. Halacha, Shulchan Aruch, Yoredeya, Reish, Samach, Gimel.
Rabbi, it's a little strange that they use colors red and not yellow because it's so obvious that the babies would be yellow if they were suffering from.
Well, I don't know.
Anyway,
I don't know if it's so obvious. Let's see. I backed up, but while I backed up, with your permission, I just want to show you here. Reish Samach. Mitzvahs aseh la'av lomos, but again, this is really off topic, but it came up in our study previously, and so for the fullness of the record, let's see. Mitzvahs aseh la'av lomos b'nai. The mitzvah is for the father to circumcise his son, and this is an incredibly important mitzvah aseh, greater than many or all of the others. Next comment, again, also off topic, but we keep on bringing it up, so I want to show this to you. Let's say a father didn't circumcise his son. Rebel, I remember we discussed related questions a few days ago. If the father failed to circumcise his son, why would a father fail to circumcise his son? Well, there are probably a million possibilities, right? Maybe the father's not around. Maybe he's impoverished, or maybe he doesn't believe in circumcision, or maybe, I don't know. So in a Jewish community where there is a Beis Din, and I don't think we're talking about a Beis Din like there's probably like the Beis Din of what do you call like of Passaic County or whatever, and then there's the Beis Din of, I think we're talking, or Brooklyn or Teaneck, we're talking about, I think, a shtetl that the Beis Din was the supreme legal body that was empowered to do things unilaterally, which is not really the reality today, but in times in European and Sephardic Jewry, there was an autonomous or semi-autonomous influence of the business. So there, and also I think hypothetically today, a lot of reality, you can't kidnap a kid. And I don't think anyone would say that you should. But if the father fails to give the child a circumcision, the Bezdin has the responsibility to oversee it. Maybe it's more of a matter of funding or providing for. And if the Bezdin also, for whatever reason, did not give the child a chance, a shot at having a circumcision, chayivu yagdil, when he gets older, he has an obligation to arrange for himself a bris. And when he gets older, as we saw earlier on in our studies, and as an adult, if he fails to give himself a bris, well, then karis is a consequence. Oh, this is the point I was trying to make. You're not allowed, and I don't remember if you were doctor, someone else asked this guy, maybe it was Alan. One is not allowed to simply take a child and circumcise them without the parents' consent. Again, unless there was a circumstance where there was the capacity, where the Bezdin was empowered legally to do so, a woman is not, in the essence, the essential obligation is the father's obligation. What do you do if the father can't give a bris? And the moihel will not do it for free, and they can't afford it. Check this out. This is an answer to another question that we've had.
Yeah.
Right? We wanted to ask about remuneration for a moihel.
Yeah, I thought a moil was not allowed to ask for schar.
Let's see. Yesh lebezdin, again, I know this is off topic of the narrow discussion, but I wanted to back up here. Yesh lebezdin ligar b'moilza. The Bezdin should give this guy a tongue lashing. Ki einza darkon shel Avram zera Avram. This is a non-Abrahamic sentiment to deprive people who can't afford a bris just because of the cost. The adraba, hamoyhalim mehadrim sheyitnu lehem lamul. The way it works is a good moyel, an upstanding moyel, seeks the opportunity to facilitate and to assist folks in arranging a bris, even bechinam. If the moyel continues to be obstinate and not administer a bris, and the father is still unable to pay him, then it's like the father is not present. The communal Bezdin is obligated to fund and procure and secure a circumcision. And then the Bezdin can use its powers to force the moil by virtue of its authority to circumcise, being that there's no one else that is there. So again, when we say that the Bezdin is obligated, we probably mean to fund, to accommodate, to facilitate. So here you see a very strong distaste for folks who are trying to charge and make a buck and not accommodating the parents who need assistance in having a bris. And so this answers another important question that we've been wondering about, moihel remuneration.
Rabbi,
yes.
Just a clarification: the Bezdin can force the moel to do the bris. Do they have to pay him for it?
I don't know. It's an interesting question.
It's not clear.
It's not clear.
And I think they should have to pay him for it from a whatever. Okay.
You're saying if a person does there's two perspectives.
Yeah.
From the moel's perspective, he trained. This is his parnasa. Yeah. You should take care of him.
Right. Somehow he should, right. If he wants to waive it and do it pro bono, that's his
You're
choice.
saying it should be the moel's
choice, yeah.
Choice.
Well, I'll tell you from reading the what's written, that the father cannot afford to pay him, then the Bezdin kofenoto, the moel. If they would pay him, they wouldn't have to be kofenoto. So, but the fact that they have the right to make him do it means they don't have to pay him. Otherwise, if
right.
They pay him,
so I think the attitude is like this: if you want to be a moel, and especially if you want to be the exclusive moel in town, well, there are certain perks, which is the well-to-do families are going to take care of you very nicely. But what we ask you to do is, when there is an impoverished family, don't make them take out a second mortgage. Help them as a chesed, and hopefully it'll balance out for you. That's the ideal sentiment. And it seems like the Bezdin is willing to go as far as to force the person. Now, I'll tell you this. Personally, I would not be comfortable having a mohel give my son a bris, and he's busy muttering under his breath and not happy. I want my mohel to be incredibly engaged and positive about this baby and the family, because obviously it's a delicate procedure and you don't want any mishaps or any extra or insufficient stuff. So obviously this is not an ideal arrangement, but in the letter of the law, it seems like the halacha says that maybe a moil can charge. This doesn't tell me the moil can charge, but if the family cannot afford, they should waive their fee. And if the moil is obstinate, the bezdin can mix in and say, hey, you want this job? Well, take care of those in need. And it sounds like, Dr. Stamler, your reading is correct, that maybe we could even force them. Now, here is an interesting teshuvah. Again, God bless Sefaria. They've linked a few different responsa literature to the Shulchan Aruch. And so here is an interesting teshuvah which touches upon what the mohel who visited us mentioned, or someone asked him and he responded. Yeled hanolad mibat Yisrael. What happens if a Jewish girl has a baby and the father is not Jewish? And you'll say, that's a shanda, how could it be? The reality is, unfortunately, not just today is there intermarriage, but in times past there was intermarriage. But more than that, unfortunately, and this is a very painful reality of the Jewish experience, which is that in almost every generation, there were wars and circumstances where there was mass events of rape. We don't like to talk about it. It's painful, but throughout the Jewish experience. And so it's not totally unheard of that even a very good girl and a good family could deal with a situation of a baby born that does not have a Jewish father, lo yaleinu. And so here the question is, what's the deal? So the answer, Havladu Yisrael Gomer. The child is 100% Jewish. He could even marry a Jew. The only restriction really is Pogam Lakuna. His baby is not able to marry a Kohen. But there's no father, so who does the bris? Hilkach mitzvah al bezdin oy al rav hakihila. The bezdin, or if there's no bezdin, the rabbi of the community, uparnaseha, and its trustees have a responsibility, lamol es habyelad hazeh b'yom hashmini, to make sure this child has a bris with all of the expenses and circumstances involved. Let's say the baby couldn't have a bris. Any other day they should give a bris. And the point of the matter is, there is a sense of communal responsibility to make sure that a child who does not have a father, even not because they're a yasim, maybe just because there is no father, the community has a responsibility to provide for this baby a bris. Now, no doubt, if our angle, the discussion we were taking is what do we do with this child, there are many other halachot and many other questions throughout that child's life that we could probe, but that's not the scope or the purpose of our study today. But just to point out that there's certainly other discussions about what the community, the bezdin, the parnasim must do to provide for a child who unfortunately does not have a father. Realize no child is at fault for the circumstance of their birth and their parents. Every child and every human being is entirely innocent and has no say about the circumstances of what brings them into this world. And we owe them the best shot in life to provide for them. What do you do about a orphan? Or wow. So this is not really what we saw earlier, but this teshuvah of Mishpatei Uziel says, well, if there is no parent or the parents fail to do so, he says, give them a bris. Not because we're doing something against the parents. On the contrary, the assumption here is that the parents couldn't be bothered. The bezdin has a responsibility. This is not about a situation where the mother is not Jewish, because then the baby is not a Jew. To give a circumcision to a child who the father is Jewish and the mother is not, it's a big problem. They may presume this person Jewish. And what's the problem? Who cares? So people will make a mistake. No, the problem is that he might marry a Jewish girl. And of course, we want a Jew to marry Jewish. And therefore, probably what's going on over here is the father has custody of the baby. The father wants the child to be Jewish. So mutav limnoya milase achi yiskar. Just wait until the baby undergoes Gior, and then he'll have a circumcision. This is what this Teshuvah says. Now, let's.
Quick question, Mary.
Yes, Doc. Yes.
Is somebody, is a mother Jewish if during her pregnancy she converts and gives birth after she's converted?
Yeah, I believe so, but it's an interesting question. It is a discussion.
Yeah.
The reality is, yes, the mother is.
I would have assumed that a Jew is always a Jew.
What do you mean?
Even if they convert, they're still a Jew.
What do you mean?
I mean, if a Jewish woman converts.
No. We're talking about.
I'm talking about a non-Jewish woman
conversion
gets
from
pregnant
being not Jewish to Jewish.
and decides that, and maybe she was not, however she got pregnant, decides that these Jewish people are really wonderful and they will be helpful and take care of me, and they have whatever. And I want to become
Rabbi,
Jewish, and she then becomes Jewish.
Rabbi,
The baby is Jewish.
If it's before she gave birth, I think the issue is not when the decisive moment is not when she was impregnated, it's when she gave birth.
Correct.
Yes, that's what I'm at.
Correct.
So that's
there
what
are
I'm saying.
some.
So then he would be Jewish and could have a birth.
so I can tell you to Bernie's question that a rabbi told me that he converted a woman in the hospital just before she gave birth.
An Orthodox rabbi told you that?
Yes.
Converted a mother in the hospital?
Without tvila in front of a Beis Din?
No. She hadn't given birth yet.
So she went to a mikvah.
But the Gior is I think has to do with tvila in front of a Beis Din.
Yeah, that's something sounds.
Yeah, you can't just say I want to be Jewish, like.
There's no holy water sprinkling.
Yeah, we don't. There's no. There,
There's a
but I'd be curious to know the circumstances of that event. But it's true, the baby would be Jewish. The reason why I didn't want to give you an emphatic answer is because there are some halachic. There is halachic relevance to know if the baby was in utero during conversion or not, as it relates to certain questions of yichus. Not for now, but there are. I'm just saying there are halachic implications. But here we're talking about a Jewish father of a Gentile mother, and the father apparently has custody. He wants the child to convert, and it sounds like there was a chance the child was going to convert. He was going to live in as part of the Jewish community, but to make sure not to do the milah prematurely.
Rabbi, I think somewhere in the Talmud they discuss exactly conversion, a woman pregnant, and all that. If I recall,
it's all discussed. But let's try to stay focused at a more narrow topic. That's circumcision, if you don't mind. Chayla. Here, this is Dr. Hammer's question. Ein molin oisai ache yavri. No bris until the baby is better. And from the moment the baby becomes better. Shiva yomim, me'es la'es. We wait 7 24-hour, precisely 7 times 24 hours. So basically, it's 7 days to the hour. The Azmal and Isa, and then we administer the circumcision. When is this? There's a fever. This is only if the baby is entirely sick, meaning the baby is sick. If there is a limited medical concern, for example, eye pain or if the issue is a single system issue and not a total state of illness, we would still hold on the bris or off the bris. But in that instance, we will do the circumcision right away. We won't make the baby wait 7 full 24-hour periods. But if it's a terrible eye pain, so then it would be the whole body. Now you're asking what I'm asking. How do we ask the baby what the source of the pain and how the baby is feeling? But I suppose what we mean is we can tell that there is a medical issue based on how the baby's behaving. Most babies cannot communicate verbally about the circumstances of their specific pain, but they have ways. Babies have ways of communicating very nicely. Here, so in the commentaries here, there's a discussion about maybe not doing the bris on Thursday, lest the greatest day of pain be on Shabbos. But then he says if that's the case, then you wouldn't do it on Erev Shabbos either. And so the Shach says basically you could do the bris as long as it's not on Shabbos. So that is a discussion that's going on over here, and that we saw. Okay. Now, here's the question. I'm not going to read this, but here's the question: the baby is born in Bein Hashmashos in twilight, so you don't know which day is the 8th day, so you wait for the 9th day, and that is the discussion. Now here, Katan Shu Yoruk, a baby who is yellow, which here we're presuming in the English translation, we're talking about a jaundice kind of situation. Simin Shalai Nafal by Damai, there is a blood issue, there's an insufficient blood, or whatever levels are going on inside the blood are not ideal. The Ein Malin Oisei Achi Yipol by Damai, we don't give the bris until the baby's appearance improves. The Yachzor Mareo Kemarish Arktanim, and the baby resumes an appearance of a standard, like an average baby. Or if the baby is a very ruddy complexion, but it's not just the baby's complexion, but it's something, there's something going on. There's also a blood-related problem where the blood is too highly present in the skin. We also wait for his appearance to become that of a normal, healthy baby. One must be very careful with these matters. We will not administer a bris if there is a chashash. Not that the baby is certainly sick. If there is a possibility that the baby is unwell, the sakanas nefasha is doicha es hakol. Jeopardy to life pushes aside everything. She'efshar lo'ilamo la'achar zman, because a bris can always be done delayed. V'efshar lahachzer nefesh achas miyisrael lo'ilam. But if God forbid someone passes as a result of a tradition, that cannot be restored. That cannot be undone.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I'm just wondering who has the final say.
Hold on. I should just point out, by the way, I'm sorry, that I think part of this Gemara is, no, this is based on our Gemara we learned yesterday, the story of Reb Nosson, where he said, hey guys, hold off on the bris. Wait till the baby gets better. Now, Rebbe, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So let's say you have a situation where they say the baby's okay. The moil takes a look and he says, sorry, I don't agree. Okay. Is he the final authority, you would think?
The moil is definitely the final authority if he is going to do a circumcision. You can't force a moil to do a bris if he believes that the baby is unwell.
I guess like our moil said, if he's uncomfortable, he say, go get another moil.
If I was a parent, and again, as I think we touched on this yesterday, if I was a parent and the moil says he's uncomfortable, I'm going to go with the moil. I want my baby to be as healthy and well as possible. I don't want to subject my baby to something.
On the other hand, if it's a question of medical, if the pediatrician would say, I'm uncomfortable, then I would say he supersedes the moil, saying,
of course, because the moil sends the parent to the pediatrician. Here we're talking about a case where the pediatrician signs off and the moil is uncomfortable. But obviously, if the pediatrician doesn't give his blessing, I personally would not be very convinced by the moil. The moil knows a certain system very well, but the pediatrician knows a lot about the baby. Although, to be honest, again, I'm not taking back what I said. Moyalim, especially those highly trained and very familiar, develop a very keen sense of what a healthy baby looks like, both in weight and appearance and reflexes. And so moyalim become quite well versed in this. But if the pediatrician says no, and the moil says, I don't care, probably find a new moil. Check this out. Again, this is in one of the Shailot Teshuvot. Kasav b'sefer, or this is in the Pischei Tshuva quote. It says b'sefer Chemudei Daniel. Tinok shelo kashru et hatabur kerao. A baby who unfortunately didn't have his umbilical cord, the severing of the umbilical cord was done not correctly. The yatsa mimeno dam harbe, and there was blood loss. Nira dein lamola achi is chazek, the yavai loydam acher. You must wait till the baby is fully recuperated from this traumatic event. So the point is a point that we can get on board with, which is that we need to be very confident in the baby's well-being. Let us, let's look at one more halacha, again, based on our Gemara. Isha Shemala b'na Rishon, a woman who circumcises her first son and he dies. I know you're wondering, even though the Gemara story was with an Isha, why do we persist with describing the story with an Isha, not a father? I don't know. Umeis, Machmas, Mila, Sheikh Shila, Koichai, the baby seems to have lost their strength. Umala Gamasheni, and the second baby, a second child, also had the same story happen. God forbid, Umeis, Machmas, Mila. I'll tell you why, says the mother. Maybe, the point is that the halacha doesn't, there could be multiple fathers, but the condition or the determination is about the mother. So not that there is no father in the picture, but the mother is going to be the constant. Maybe I'm just thinking out loud. Umeis machmas mila, and that might be another answer why in the Gemara too, or at least maybe the Shulchan Aruch is learning the Gemara. That's why it talks about the mother. Remember yesterday we asked if there's a father too. 3 babies. There's obviously there's some father, but maybe the halacha of the presumption of a baby having a condition that doesn't warrant circumcision, maybe that is based on the mother. Let's see. Isha shemala ben arishayin umeis machmas mila shel koicha mila gamasheni. The mother whose first child died from circumcision, and the second child also dies from circumcision. The status, the presumption is that her children are not able to endure a circumcision. And here the Shulchan Aruch clears up my question clearly. We are not so concerned if it's the same father or different fathers, which again would answer who asked the question about yesterday if our Gemara is evidence that that a mother can do the bris. And we asked why does it talk about Shemala? This is probably the real answer. Dr. Stam, are you makabel this pshat?
I have a different problem. My problem is I think that the way the Gemara talks about bringing up constantly the women losing the babies doesn't make any difference which husband it was. That the Gemara, and I'm reaching over here, if everything goes okay, then the father did a great thing. However, if something goes wrong, then it's the mother's fault.
I understand why someone would come from that angle. I'm not inclined to accept it. I don't think.
Because
I think we are projecting a modern.
Then it becomes factual that her children die because of the mila. They're not blaming the father at all. They're blaming her.
No, it's not about blame. We're presuming a medical condition.
I understand a genetic, but the genetic medical condition could follow the father too, not necessarily the mother.
Why are you saying genetic? But yeah, let's see. Well, there is a simple problem. It's much harder to know about the father than the mother. You understand that?
I'm sorry?
We have much more certainty about the identity of the mother.
Well, that's why that's why we follow the mother.
Right. All right, let's see. So it's the father's responsibility, but if there's a medical condition, we're gonna potentially, or in halacha, we're gonna consider the mother, which again further underscores the chiddush of our Gemara, which is Nasan and Bavli saved the third baby from being doomed to no bris. Because if we would follow what we understand, which is that after 2 babies, there's no more bris, without Nasan and Bavli, that other baby never would have gotten a bris. Anyways, let's see. Don't give a bris to the third child. Wait until the baby gets older. Umeisamach masmila lo yama ashlishi. Oh, bein shahayulai mi isha achas. The same halacha would apply. So I stand corrected. I should have read more before engaging. The same thing would it be if it was the same father. So basically, we do consider the possibility of a hereditary illness, either that is passed on maternally or paternally. And
But
if we had a
Rabbi,
very good editor, I would tell them to edit the 2 minutes of Dr. Stammer and my dialogue, simply because the Gemara responds to that. But we don't, so it'll all stay in the public record.
Rabbi,
Hold on. Regardless of it's one mother or two mothers. Yes, Rabbi.
but the Gemara mentioned the kind of things that relate to the mother. The baby's not nursing, the lips are dry.
No,
etc.,
you're mixing up two different discussions.
Different.
We had a discussion about different possible issues that a baby could have. But then we specifically spoke of the babies, the conditions that prevent a baby from being circumcised. And those conditions were in the Gemara, yellow and red, which we said was either too pale or too red. And it's on that discussion that I'm choosing to study a Gemara, which is really a third issue we didn't read yet, or we're not going to read, but it's for the fullness of the record.
Rabbi, there's a whole other area of problem in the Mila. I don't know if it's going to be discussed here or not, and that is the genitals themselves. Are they formed? Are they not formed?
That was the question that Alan well, not exactly the same, but yeah. So for now, we're talking about a baby that is generally healthy, but there is an issue with his, in the moment, weak or jaundiced or whatever. But you're right, there are a whole many different variables which we're not going to discuss in this Gemara. But I think we'll walk away nonetheless with a pretty well-rounded picture of the general and most common questions. I mean, let's be honest, if the baby does not have genitals, there's nothing to do. You can't give the baby a bris. I actually skipped over a barrel to give you credit.
Yeah.
To give you credit, although I was relishing beating you up, but to give you credit, I did jump over.
Yeah, yeah.
I jumped just to show you. It's not that you're asking a good question.
Yeah.
Zman mila lebari lechela androgynous. And so here,
yeah,
androgynous umishi shtei haros v'yotze daifen imol mishmaina. A baby that has simonim that has facets that are masculine and feminine, or two arlets. I don't know what that would look like. I guess an extra layer of skin, or even if a person had a C-section. But that in here. Hold on, no, that's not what I was looking for. I'm sorry. Okay, we'll find it another time. There is some discussion, but it's beyond. It's a stretch beyond.
By the way, if you go back a little bit, wait, hold, stop.
Do me a favor. Let's
go down a little bit. One line, go down. Okay, stop.
No, that's where we're holding. Let's read it together. You don't challenge me from the text that we're going to study. We have yet to study. Let's learn it. Hang on 1 second.
No, the point I wanted to make is that Talmud is certainly aware, because I remember discussion for marriage, etc., and they go into gruesome details, so to speak.
Let's try not to project ill. What's right? The Gemara can't tell us everything in one breath, and so the Gemara is talking about certain things. We're not avoiding anything, but let's take the Gemara as it comes, instead of reading ill intention or a cover up in the Gemara where there isn't. And where there is, we can talk about it. Dr. Stamler here, V'yesh Cholkin. So although the Beis Yosef presents the halacha that says that both father and mother alone can have a chazaka or a presumption that their babies are not able to endure bris, there is a machlokes, V'yesh Cholkin Masrilu D'Lishayich V'ish Rak V'isha. There is a perspective that says that it is exclusively by the mother, not the father.
I saw that, and
I know that's what you wanted to show, but we were in the middle of
I appreciate it. I didn't realize.
We can't slug up the Beis Yosef by the Ramah. This is the descent. So indeed, there is a perspective that says that it's only following the mother.
Yeah, blame the mother.
Menachem, it's who controls the screen. That's the ultimate decider.
You see? Now, so how does halacha l'maisa? How do we follow? Which way? The Ishcholkim, or so basically this goes back. Hold on, I just want to.
I would assume, since they put it in parentheses, that the halacha is not in parentheses, that it's just to show that there's a dissenting opinion.
Yeah, what I don't understand here.
But I'm also surprised that it says the suffix nefashos.
Oh, there's a mistake. No. I had the same question as you, but I realize now. Can I show you something? There's a mistake here. The venira belongs out of the parentheses. So the answer here is venira the suffix nefashos lahaka. We don't follow the more stringent viewpoint. We'll push off the bris under both circumstances, even though there is a more permissive opinion. It's a typo here. It's got to be, because otherwise the context, it doesn't read right. So the parentheses should be over here, and then the response is venira the suffix nefashos lahaka, and therefore we do not give a bris, whether it's the mother or the father. But Dr. Stamler, very astute, and that was reflective of my thought process as we were learning it. Now let's see. Why was there a theory that says only the mother, not the father? Is this about blaming the mother, not the father? So in the Gemara, in the medicine of the time of the Gemara, there was an understanding, which is not, well, anyways, there was an understanding that different parts of the person come from the mother's DNA, and there's part that comes from the father's DNA. And so, and it had to do with probably a more simplistic understanding of the appearance of the contribution that the male made versus the female made, and other facets of human biology. And the understanding was that human blood, came from the mother's component of what develops into a fetus. And if the blood comes from the mother, well, then the medical conditions relating to blood will be common on a maternal line. So again, I don't think today's medicine would support that. But if you want to know the theory, why someone, the Chidushi Aguda, was inclined to say that it's only the mother, not the father, it has to do with this medical understanding that all blood-related issues follow the mother. Now, the reality is there are certain medical conditions or certain genes that are only from the mother, and there are certain things that are only maternal. And there are others that are both. So it's not that they were terribly off, but in reality, I'm not certain.
But I'll give you another situation. When it comes to becoming pregnant, if a woman did not become pregnant, then it was always assumed that it's the woman's fault, not the male's fault.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. But that's the way.
Actually, that's not true. I respectfully.
That's why a man was even
the
encouraged to divorce his wife.
No, the Rambam discusses female infertility and male infertility. And the Rambam even has a proposal of how to identify, based on what they had available then, to identify if it is male or female infertility. Now, I think where you're correct is that if the issue is on the microscopic level, there might have been a presumption to blame the woman more than the man. And today we know, because we're able to, today you're able to take a sperm sample and see, and many times it is male infertility, but we shouldn't paint the Gemara with a broad stroke that they didn't believe in male infertility. But you're probably correct that the presumption put more pressure on the woman than the man.
Rabbi,
I don't think this is.
Jesus.
There's an excellent Israeli movie about that, Menachem. Try to find it.
Alan?
Rabbi, I don't understand the translation here.
Which translation where?
It says he had another who died from the circumcision. We don't circumcise the third one, whether they were from a one wife or from two.
Right.
Well, we're talking about one, not they.
No, sometimes a man could have more than one wife. They get divorced and remarried. And sometimes a man could have the same wife throughout all the children. The man could also be widowed, I should say, and that was probably a very common event in the time past. So what the halacha here is talking about is, if there is apparently a hereditary illness, well, then we take serious both if it's the same father and different mother, or the same mother and different fathers. That's the point we're making over here.
What Menachem said is supported by the story of Abraham and Sarah and Hagar.
Yeah.
Because the Sarah couldn't have children for some time, but Hagar could have it from the first encounter with the same husband.
But in his case, it was correct. It was, in his case,
on the woman, not on the man.
Listen, there.
Rabbi.
But in Avram's case, it was correct. Once
Yeah.
he had Hagar, he was able to have a son.
Dr. Hammer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned and question why we have to wait for a second person to die before the Gemara talks about doing everything you can to make sure that this child who is who's being
So you're asking an interesting question I hadn't considered, but you're saying,
Yeah.
why do we wait for two children to die?
right.
Why don't we immediately take precautions after one child's death?
And not not the precaution that they suggest, which I think is extreme. Why not say, that you could hold off the bris until the parents and the moel and the base or whatever are more confident that, given that history, that it will not be repeated or whatever. I mean, it's just you need
You're asking a very interesting question.
I think that in case of the first child dying, then I think with the second child, most likely you wait. And after you wait and the second child dies, then you say the third child.
Okay, but you don't. It doesn't say that, Menachem.
No, I agree. It does not say that.
Right.
I think the tragic reality, but you're asking an interesting question. The tragic reality is that it probably was not so uncommon for infant mortality.
Right.
And so if one baby died around the time of a bris, it may have not been at all clear that it was the bris that did the baby in. And therefore, if after one baby died, they would not do a bris, very few people would have bris in times past. Again, this is I don't know, but I'm assuming. 2 is sufficient to establish a pattern. By the way, usually, halachically, we only consider 3. 3 becomes a presumption. So really 2 already represents a certain erring on an extra, we're giving the presumption sooner than standard halacha because of life and death. So I think you're asking a good question. Again, I didn't study this. My sense is that one baby is not a pattern, and ein l'davar sof, 2 babies creates a pattern. But today in medicine, for example, we give a lot of weight to family history. And today, I think we understand better how many conditions are prevalent in a family, or if someone in the family has an issue, the odds are, and genetic screening, we're able to take the guesswork out of a lot of these things. But that is so. But I am curious, and I keep my eyes peeled if there is any discussion what to do after one baby. The other thing I'm just thinking is that, God forbid, something happens to the first baby, you sue the mohel for malpractice. God forbid you get another mohel and the same thing happens. All of a sudden you say, oh, maybe it wasn't the mohel after all. Maybe there was a hereditary condition. So I'm thinking of human nature. We don't want to, and we probably don't immediately assume that there is a innate problem. We're usually going to try to look for an environmental issue, but then 2 becomes a pattern that's unavoidable. Now the interesting thing, in just reading the language of this, it says Sheichshila koichai. Oh, I guess the bris weakened the baby. It doesn't sound like the baby died on the Sandik's lap, which supports maybe what I was saying, that unfortunately infant mortality was high and they couldn't necessarily immediately tie it to the bris. Again, this is not Torah Misinai. This is just my sense of what may have been going on over here. Obviously, if the baby looks weak, they shouldn't give a bris. And obviously, if the first baby died, they're going to be a whole lot more mindful of the baby's condition.
I would say it's negligence of the parents, because if the first one dies, you make sure that the second one is checked by a doctor, by a pediatrician first.
Well, why are we presuming?
The mohel just makes a slight cut. I mean, he's not liable for death.
We shouldn't presume that there was no pediatrician involved. I think we're projecting a little bit. Sometimes you do everything right on paper, and yet a mishap happens. So today we have greater ability to diagnose if it's hemophilia or if there's an issue with the blood. We can identify that much sooner. In those days, there were a million conditions that we didn't have a scientific explanation, and there were millions of conditions we couldn't predict. And in general, many things. So I think we have to try to place these conversations to some extent into the realities of the times.
Rabbi,
Yes.
Rabbi, even today we have unexplained crib death. Even today, God forbid.
Certainly. Leolino, yes.
I think also today, with circumcision being so prevalent in the non-Jewish world, that there's a lot more experience and knowledge for pediatricians that they have with when it comes to regard in regard to having circumcision.
And I'll tell you more than that.
Procedure so early in life.
And likely we have better, sharper, more effective tools to administer these procedures. And that too may contribute to a general elevation of wellness. We have an idea of keeping things sterile and sanitizing. We use alcohol and other techniques to sanitize and to clean the tools that are being used. And we have antibacterial creams. I think medicine today has elevated most steps of the bris to hopefully better preserve the baby's condition. And so maybe even a family that had some kind of susceptibility to infection that maybe in times past could have, God forbid, led to the passing of one baby or two babies. And today, with Hashem's help, we have the ability to avoid many of the avoidable things that could happen.
You also have better eyeglasses and better mouthwash.
Well, let me tell you, the idea of using Listerine as a disinfectant is not exactly something that induces,
You're saying as someone of the medical profession, that doesn't give you confidence.
No, using Listerine as a disinfectant does not induce confidence, no.
And then we're almost out of time. Actually, we're over time. We didn't even look into the Gemara. I hope you'll consider this today's exercise as fruitful. And I want to thank everyone for engaging in a good, vigorous conversation. I think many important and interesting and thought-provoking points were raised today. Do me a favor. I just want to honor a barrel before we go.
Yeah.
Sure.
Or actually, Alan, take a look. No lad kishahu mahul, a baby that is born without a foreskin. I wasn't planning on reading this, but you asked the question. And after beating you up, I think we deserve to at least take a peek. Torech lahatif mimeno dambris. So what do we do? As Alan predicted, we draw a prick, a little bit of blood. Umiyu benachas. B'tzrichim milsa lemivdeka yafa yafa b'yadayim mar sinayim. We need to really make sure that we're not missing something. V'loy b'parzala deloy la'ayik Okay, let's read this in English, actually. One who was born and it is as if he was circumcised. We have to draw some blood. We may find that the foreskin is ingrown and he does need a circumcision. So it could be that the circumcision is pulled down, let's say, or otherwise there's something wrong, but it doesn't mean that he's circumcised. You should check very closely by hand and look with your eyes. Dr. Hammer, you were joking when you said that we have better eye gear, but you were actually mechaven.
Right.
We should not probe with metal. You should not hurt the baby. And be very careful if you do circumcise the baby with this condition to wait a long time. Don't wait for the 8th day. Don't bring the baby to danger. So obviously, if a baby's physiology is different than the average, but maybe there is yet a bris to be done, be mindful that this is not a typical bris, and we don't want to, God forbid, contribute or harm the baby. Another painful halacha that I'm just going to sneak in before we close out. We mentioned this. I just want to show it to you. A baby who passes before the 8th day. The Chaver Kadisha circumcises that baby. This baby is then given a Jewish name. So again, a painful way to close.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to add on one more thing. Lahatif, we prick. Here is the Berhetiv ve'ein mevarchin ala mila. The baby does not get a bracha. Elam nearest like arla kavush, unless there is some foreskin that's pulled back. Because of abach, the ha'im ha'ya vaday arla kavusha, He basically brings an opinion that says that you do make a bracha. And so that's a better way to end today's session.
I can make it a
Barrel.
little better way to end. Tomorrow, if I'm late, I'm
Yeah.
still at the bris.
I was just gonna say.
All right, Beryl, we
Mazel
expect a
tov and
blow.
Shana Tova.
We expect a blow by blow report.
Pardon the pun.
Yeah. And we expect virtual bagels.
It's a good thing that the Moyle doesn't know what we're studying.
Yeah, don't tell him till
I don't want to
afterwards.
put pressure on him.
Yeah, make sure the Priya is done correctly.
All right, dear friends, thank you for your indulgence. Thank you for making this once again a very fruitful and well thought out, well researched exercise in studying about bris. Again, all off of the Gemara road, but very much directly connected to the Gemara we learned. And I hope we come away a little bit more informed in the halacha lemasa, the practical side of what we discussed. May Hashem bless all of Klal Yisrael with good health and all our babies with good health. And we show them good news and healthy news and happy news as we approach this new year. Thank you all so much.
Amen.
Thank you.